Hello and welcome to today's webinar, The Pros and Cons of Hybrid Cloud Managed Services, sponsored by Taos. I'm Jenna Sargent, news editor of SD Times. Before we get started, I have a couple of quick housekeeping announcements. First, this webinar will be recorded and available on demand through the sdtimes.com website about 24 hours after the event. Secondly, if at any time you have questions about or during the presentation, you may submit them using the chat. Now moving on to today's webinar. Hybrid cloud managed services can mean high-cost governance headaches and cloudy visibility of your organization. Unless you are in the business of managing hybrid cloud infrastructure, deploying and securing and ensuring cloud compatibility can leave you restless and stuck in your tracks. But in this webinar, experts from Taos will share how a few simple steps can help you deploy quicker and save faster. They'll offer helpful tips for deploying hybrid cloud managed services, whether on your own or with a managed service provider, as well as insights into how built-in continuous improvement and automation can accelerate any hybrid cloud managed services success. Our speakers today include Justin Cooley, Director of Hybrid Cloud at Taos, Lindsay Turner, Director of Customer Success at Taos, Wister Falcon, VP of Managed Services at Taos, Stefan Dunnigan, VP of Operations and Networks at Griffinai. Now to get things started, I'll turn it over to you, Wister.
Thank you very much, Jenna. Really appreciate that. Yeah, in today's discussion, we'll kind of go through, as mentioned earlier, right, managed services, some of the pros and cons, some of the challenges and so forth. For that reason, just to kind of get a full experience, we've also invited Stefan from Griffin.ai. And I really want to say, thank you, Stefan, for taking time out of your busy calendar. With that said, why don't you tell us a little bit about Griffin?
Sure, Wister. Thanks for having me foremost, and thanks for everyone's time today. Who's Griffin.ai? Well, Griffin.ai is a Boston-based SaaS company and innovators of voice-driven sales technology. We offer the only real-time AI-powered conversation intelligence with in-the-moment call coaching and guided selling. Although foundational to who we are today, analytics, AI, machine learning is something we more recently moved towards over the last handful of years. Initially, we were founded in the late 90s with a focus on real-time marketing compliance solutions for compliance with do not call and other do not call and telemarketing, do not contact, I should say, and other telemarketing rules and regulations, starting with the phone channel. And that graduated towards other channels like email, postal mail, SMS/text, and even fax at one point, if you could believe that. We may even be able to dust that facsimile engine off if needed. But long story short is we quickly became sort of the gold standard in the all-channel marketing compliance space with a focus on large enterprises, large Fortune type companies that generated a lot of liability, that did business from a lot of different systems, disparate systems, and really our approach was the kiosk to the call center, right around the phone channel and everywhere in between. You need, when you have a compliance program, it needs to work wherever someone may exist, and whether that's a road warrior, a branch office, home-based agent, contact center, kiosk, you name it. You need a solution that is tried and true and can keep you out of the crosshairs of the regulators across those various environments. And that's exactly what we did. And we did that to the tune of many billions of transactions per month. And it was because of this approach and because of our tier one carrier grade telephony infrastructure that we supported and still support, that we really realized that in-path approach to do not contact put us in contact with a treasure trove of qualitative recordings, transcripts, and quantitative analytical data. Quantitative being metrics, KPIs, and really that was our foray, if you will, into the sales enablement and revenue intelligence space. And that's where we play today. We still have a lot of work and business on the marketing compliance side, but we've we've diversified, and our primary focus is on our live sales intelligence AI bot, and all the really cool things we're doing around real-time coaching, guided selling, and so forth.
Excellent, Griffin. Stefan, thank you very much for that time. So let's get into the business challenges around hybrid cloud managed services, right? So today's focus will end up being a little bit about how do I reduce hybrid cloud infrastructure OpEx? How do I reduce unplanned outages? How can I put in place automation to improve operations from how to reduce all of those ticket volumes? And that kind of leads into how do I increase the agility to reduce that mean time to respond when incidents occur, scenarios occur, right? How can I close that window and be a little bit, proactive in the items that I do? How do I accelerate the problem determination and a root cause? Those are all key items. And I think, many of our clients see this today. So Stefan, are these things that kind of relate to your environment, or are there anything different than these?
Yeah, I mean, these all are applicable to us, quite honestly, Wister. I mean, they're a large reason why when we were looking at the public cloud from our current provider and current data centers, that we looked at Taos and we looked at our current public cloud provider, right? Because of our need to mature as an organization from a technology perspective, and have access to resources outside of our own organization, of course, that can help us meet all of the objectives that we had.
Excellent. Yeah, I think once we look at these key challenges, then it's how do I manage the skills, the gaps, and identify the right expertise, right? Because eventually what you really want to have is a trusted partner to actually bring you to the next level. And so then we have to ask ourselves, as we have identified some of these challenges, what if I could, right? How do I offload those non-core tasks to an experienced hybrid cloud managed service provider, right? What are the drivers to efficiency? Yeah, so I can reinvest in other innovations and so forth, as opposed to just working on the same things every single day. How do I access cutting edge technical expertise with a hybrid cloud managed services provider? And as I partner with a hybrid cloud managed service provider, being able to have flexible choices around the technologies being used or the agnostic approach, because as a hybrid cloud managed service provider, you really need to focus and figure out, right? How can I work in this cloud? Can I work in that cloud? Many of our clients, have that. Can a hybrid cloud managed service provider bring that to you to kind of help you get to the next level, which ultimately brings us to increase your security and maturity, reducing your risk, right? This is, again, back to how do I partner with someone as a managed service provider that's a trusted partner. And Stefan, are these some of the key questions and things that you've asked yourself as well?
Yeah, they really are, Wister. Access to cutting edge technical expertise, just to extend on what I just stated before, we're a relatively small organization, right? Getting resources in here, although we have a great team, we always need to augment what we're doing. Taos and hybrid cloud managed services has been instrumental in this, right? To be able to provide expertise around areas that we may not be proficient in, or we just may not have the resources to cover. And then, getting to the last bullet, security is top of the mind for anyone in operations and network services, as I am today, right? It's a different world, right? There's a lot of bad actors, and cybersecurity threats are greater than they ever have been, and they only seem to be increasing. And to leverage the expertise of a partner like Taos and hybrid cloud managed services has really been critical to us strengthening our security posture across the board.
Yeah, it's really good to hear. I think so. We've identified some of the challenges, and with those challenges, what if I could do the next step? So let's talk a little bit more about the offering itself, right? What is hybrid cloud managed services? What are those key capabilities? What's essential, right? You can go to a managed service provider, but what are the things that you really need? What's important? What can be implemented? How do we integrate? And then as you have all of the tools and the ideas and the workflows, right? what are the different support models that I have? Maybe I don't need a fully dedicated team. Maybe I need a shared team. Maybe I need one or the other. So those are the items that we'll kind of jump into here. And I think Justin can talk about the platforms, right? The different tool sets and the diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. So with hybrid cloud managed services, it's really important to have a partner that's tool agnostic. You'll see a lot of tools listed on this slide, right? It's kind of a busy slide, but every single one of these tools has a great, effect within a hybrid cloud managed services, and the ability for that team to traverse into multiple different tools to combine the best tools and solutions for the right solution for the client, right? That's critical. And then, there's another caveat to that says that a hybrid cloud managed services should also have a complete tooling solution that they bring to the forefront for those clients that are coming in with they're just getting started in their cloud journey, right? So you should be the expert in a lot of different tools out there and have the ability to traverse multiple different tool sets to provide the right solution for your clients. A perfect example of this is some of the monitoring aspects and the observability that we have built for Griffin, partnering with Griffin to make sure that we're getting the telephoning stack monitored properly, right? And the curl checks and things of that nature have been critical in our deployment and work with Griffin.
Yeah, those are key items that you mentioned. I think the diversity of the tools, right? We talked about some observability, and then how do we integrate those into what the clients have from an environment perspective, and so that brings us kind of to our core capabilities, right? So these are fundamentally the things that you need to have: monitoring and event management, right? We kind of talked about Datadog, and there's other monitoring tools that you have. You have PagerDuty as well from an event management perspective also, right? You can purchase or have a tool implemented, and it's nice to have, turn it on and say, oh, I'm monitoring everything. But it's not just turning it on. It is really the critiquing it and making what matches the criteria to my environment, right? Do I have tier 1 systems? Do I have tier 3 systems? How important is it for this particular system to be up with minimal risk, whereas maybe in a dev environment, a QA, it's not as critical, so you have an alert and so forth. So just because you monitor the environment, you still need to be able to change and modify those and configure them to your environment the way that they need to be set up. Those things should lay the road for going into incident management, right? So how much of this can I automate? How many of the events that occur, the incidents that occur, can that automatically create a ticket? So now in my incident management process, I actually have step-by-step process of what I need to do, right? The span of incident lifecycle is to understand everything coming in, what are my actions, because the goal is to return that IT service to the users as quickly as possible. And then being able to look at that historically so that you have a roadmap as to maybe there's some changes that need to go into the system, right? So do you have a change management process? Are you going to be able to test? Do you have a backout plan? Do you have approvals? What are your notifications? What are your maintenance windows? Right? It's not just about making changes and knowing that you have changes. There's a holistic view of how everything needs to work together. And as you implement those changes, then you have the system administrators, between different levels of L2 through cloud 2, 3, 4 individuals and so forth, who has which rights to do which items at what period of time, and from an expertise perspective, what can be automated because it can do scripting. And those individuals at the same time will do workload and service provisioning. Are you going to establish templates and process for provisioning systems and changes in your network, as opposed to, okay, someone needs a system built, let's go build something, right? Can you build templates? Can you make sure that everything's up to date from a security perspective and things of that nature, which then takes us to patching, right? If I'm going to deploy into my environment, now how do I manage the security aspect of these, right? Am I going to patch on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis, on a bi-monthly basis? Because of the risk and having some systems down for so many times within the year or within the month. Am I going to be able to take care of 0-day alerting, that kind of comes in. Notifications, how do I strive to get that done? Am I going to be able to manage patching from a high availability? I can only patch one side of the systems at one period of time while the other side is up and running. And then what am I going to do from a validation perspective? And then all this is driven to documentation and knowledge management. As you recall, when we talked about incident management, you can get an alert that comes in, but to have a pre-described alert that has been well defined to say, it is for this system, it is for this situation, it is for these tiered systems, and be able to track that into a knowledge book or an SOP run book. Now you have a level 2 person that knows exactly what am I going to do, right? This is my triage process. I need to do A, B, and C, and I can't really deviate from that. If I have to deviate from that, maybe that really needs to be escalated to another group. Or maybe a particular alert comes in, documentation says, when this alert comes in, that automatically needs to go to a different group, and here's who you should notify. Stefan, in your experience with, are these core capabilities items that you've, experienced? What's your viewpoint on this?
Yeah, all these really are on varying levels. I'll focus on a few of them. Monitoring and alerting, mission critical to what we're doing, right? We run a real-time compliance engine and analytics a product set. We need to make sure if there's any availability issues, if there's any degradation in service, any latency that's introduced across the platform, or basic things like system health or other service checks, curl checks that are not optimal, that we're getting immediate notice on them. And that's where Taos and the hybrid cloud managed services offering comes in. We built out a extensive dashboard that monitors every component of our network, right? Our VMs, our connectivity, our carriers, our telephony stacks, which is pretty unique to what we're doing here, and so forth. And we also built out an extensive SOP runbook, whereas if certain things come up, Taos has the authority to take corrective action to either remediate an issue or circumvent an issue if it's not something that's immediately able to be remediated. And that's what we build on. Every day we build on that process. We need to get better and to be able to respond to anything that may surface as quickly as possible with Taos's help, of course. And then the other thing I'll touch a little bit on is patching. We always had a patching process, right, with our previous providers. However, we've certainly optimized that with help of Taos. We have a regular cadence which we abide by, and the entirety of our network footprint is patched. We have it basically game planned out in terms of what machines are going, how things are grouped, how things are sequenced, because we have certain assets within our environment. They need to come up in a specific order, especially those machines that are clustered on some level. We have that. We have a custom dashboard, patching dashboard that we built out with the help of Taos, where not only do we see everything get patched, come down, come back up, but we also make sure that any sort of services, any curls that are needed to run, any health checks that need to run are actually recovered post-patching. And if not, we can remediate those because we know exactly where to put focus on. If Comcat doesn't restart on a specific machine, we know that because the patching dashboard is telling us that. So it's certainly streamlined the process. It's made it a lot more efficient. And we always try to improve upon things, but I think we have a pretty rock solid process with your help.
Thanks for that. You bring up some really good points, specifically around patching, right? Because just like we mentioned observability and monitoring, it's nice to have a tool and turn it on, but you have to you have to change it, right? You have to configure it. And from a patching perspective, yes, you apply patches and so forth, but some of the things you mentioned in regards to sometimes there's a sequence of how things need to be brought up. Maybe the systems come up, but then there's communication, in services between certain different systems and so forth, that also needs to be validated. And to have that done manually all the time, sometimes you can miss it. Sometimes you think it's running when it's not. There's double checks that you have to do. So putting automation around a lot of that actually solidifies the efficiency of what you're doing and make sure that it's actually done correctly. And then, the last item, which I didn't touch on earlier, was just backup and monitoring, right? Same scenario, right? It's a critical aspect of, if my systems were to go down, I need to be able to restore them. Well, it's nice to know that you have a backup solution. It's nice to know that the backup solutions are running, but have you validated those backups? Are they actually good backups? Are they actually in the sequence that they should be? So you need to go through a process of making sure that you can validate those backups. You go through a practice run from a restore perspective for clients. Maybe it's a full image replacement. Maybe it's a time sequence, restore that has to happen. But you have to be able to go through those scenarios and actually schedule them to happen so that you know for sure that, of value, those backups truly do work. As we go through here, then we have to think about the teams that are being built to actually support this. Justin, tell us a little bit about these different team members and the makeup and their responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at the heart of any hybrid cloud managed services is going to be a robust team, right? It's all about your people. And this this shows you a little bit of how the team is made up. So the L2 resources, these are cloud system sysadmins. They are the primary responders, right? They're the 24/7 support structure for the operations center. Their knowledge is very wide. So what I mean by that is they work across multiple hyperscalers in the shared CAS model, which we'll get into a little bit deeper on further slides. But they're that first responder. They are going to be working out of SOPs and knowledge bases against alerting that occurs. And they will be responding and being that initial MTTR for the client, right? And historically, we run about 60 to 70% of the tickets get solutioned at this level. The more tickets that we can, the more knowledge base articles that we can build and deliver for clients, the more and more of the ticket volume we can solution at the L2 level. At that point, there's an escalation path to the cloud engineers. The L3 engineers are the escalation point for the operations center, and they're a delivery driver for project and service requests. So think about the stuff that needs to be automated. These are automation engineers. They sit in the background, and their ability comes in, and they're very deep in technology, whether it be automation technology or across multiple hyperscalers or the towers that they are in, which could be DBAs, it could be Windows engineers, it can be Linux engineers, so on and so forth. And they typically solution the 30 to 40% that come in at that point as an escalation point. Now, the architects and SREs, they're also sitting out there, and they're a further escalation point on the really difficult tasks, right? They're often the last line of defense for very complex issues. They also bring in problem management and solution through automation, a lot of the different issues that occur, just so that they never fire off again. They're also building the knowledge base for the L2 team so that they can solution more and more as they traverse the solution for the client. And then we go into the client customer success manager, which I'm going to hand off to Lindsay for a little explanation.
Thanks, Justin. Customer Success Manager is someone who partners with clients and delivery teams to ensure desired outcomes and serve as the advocate and key collaborator for the client. The role is vital in that it serves to connect the client with the service from a business and delivery excellence perspective.
Perfect, Lindsay. I know we'll probably have another slide later that talks more about the Customer Success Manager. I do want to add, in regards to a lot of the L2 through L4, right? It's, I mentioned earlier from a business challenge perspective, having the right expertise. It's not just having the right expertise, but having these teams work together, as well as how do they communicate, right? What are the processes that they have to follow? Because if you don't have process in place, then who's going to communicate to who? Who do I reach out to for what scenarios of what's occurring? How do I, and that all impacts your resolution time. It impacts your acknowledgement time, to these actual tickets. And so based on that, then you have to think about, how do I build this particular team? And so from a build perspective, we have some flexible models. Justin, why don't you add some information around these?
Yeah,
models?
absolutely. So two different models shown here. There's the shared services model and the dedicated services model. The shared services model, as we listed here, is highly efficient, right? Now, think of multiple different clients being in one pane of glass. So what's critical about the shared services model is that you have to prioritize during the transition of the tickets that are coming in. So imagine if every ticket that came across the pane of glass was a P1, then nothing becomes a P1 at that point, right? So you have to know what the critical systems for the environment for each and every client is. And then you can set up your alerting to be proper coming in for, a P1 actually being something that's business critical for a client. Versus a P3 that says that, this might be a non-production environment. We can get to it when time permits. Now, one of the aspects of shared services model is that it's very burstable. So what I mean by that is we have multiple, sysadmin, cloud sysadmin sitting there watching this pane of glass. And when something hits that's very high, a high target, a P1 type incident, we have enough staff to be able to burst and go after restoral for any client out there in a very quick manner, right? The dedicated model is it is highly customizable. Now you can imagine dedicated model. We're talking about taking individuals and putting them just in one pane of glass for one client. Oftentimes they're working out of the client's tool set, including the ITSM and various other aspects. Maybe the monitoring observability platform is all client-based. What you get from this, though, is that the ability of this team is almost like an extension of the FTEs that are within the client, right? This is going to be a situation to where they are going to know your client inside and out because that's all they do all day. They're sitting in the client environment and they're looking for ways of doing proactive improvement in the client's environments. So it kind of sets them apart, but there's a reason for these to be the right solution for various different clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the distinctions here between a shared model and a dedicated model, and there's a couple. One is in a dedicated model, sometimes the client is a little bit more mature. They have some defined alerts that are happening. They have some defined process that are happening, but so it's not just about adding bodies from a dedicated perspective. It's what is the process that they're going to bring in that you're using possibly for sure in the shared model. In a shared model, maybe a client doesn't have the tools to put in their environment, which is the reason that you kind of do a shared model. And as you said, the burstability, but there's workflow, there's process, there's actually a defined way to triage tickets, my escalation process. All of those really apply amongst all of these particular teams. And from a dedicated perspective, it doesn't mean dedicated physically with the client, but there's even within an operations center, these are the dedicated individuals that kind of learn your system. They're focused only on you. It's the only thing that they do, right? So just because someone from a managed service can bring bodies, it's not just about the bodies. It's about the whole entire process. Because if there's no predefined process that you're going to follow, then you're probably not going to get the accuracy and the triaging and being able to hit what we would note as SLAs and SLOs. And so we'll go into this. And Justin, can you add some commentary to these particular SLAs and SLO items?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of a standard package for SLA and SLO. Industry-wide, if you go into a partnership with a hybrid cloud managed services, you're going to get a package that looks similar to this. Oftentimes they are negotiable, especially when you pick a dedicated CAS, because you figure a dedicated CAS is sitting in the client's environments and their response time should be much quicker in the ability to traverse response times and restoral time should be quicker. But I want to convey here that while these are various examples of KPIs, and they are certainly important and you should be meeting these all the time for your clients, but if you as a client are spending your days diving into why your partner missed the KPIs again and again, then I kind of say perhaps you have the wrong partner. SLAs and SLOs are critical to meet and exceed for your clients, but they're table stakes. This is stuff that you should meet every single time, and you should be moving on to stuff that's more important for your clients, like improvements, automations, and value add opportunities within the engagement.
Yeah, good detail. So, Stefan, how do these SLAs and SLOs maybe have they impacted your portion of the business?
Sure, they're mission critical. I mean, I stated earlier that we live in the fabric of our clients' sales and marketing efforts, and really their ability to do outreach to prospects and their customers. And what that really means is their ability to make money in a lot of circumstances. So it's extremely important that we have an expeditious response to any service availability issues that arise, degradation, latency issues, from that initial alert to the engagement of necessary Taos resources to help remediate the issue. What does that mean? That means that we need open line of communication with documented SOP runbooks, and as mentioned earlier, allowing Taos the latitude to take corrective action where documented. Right? If there's a problem that's documented in the runbook, we allow Taos to make that judgment call to kick a system, to restart a service, or whatever the case may be. So in essence, we're taking corrective action to fix a system, or we're taking corrective action in some cases to bypass or circumvent where an issue may arise. And Taos is critical to that, to augment what we do here internally at Griffin.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I think again we've talked a little bit about predefined data, predefined steps, and in this case, predefined metrics that you have to be able to measure against. Because if you can't measure against something, then how do you know what the success criteria is? How do you know that you're being successful? And it's taking all of these data points, which kind of leads us into the next slide, which talks about our customer success manager. So Lindsay, what do the CSMs kind of do? How do they play a role with all of this data, and how they kind of, take it to the next level?
Sure. So a CSM is a key role in the client relationship for a managed service. This person develops a trusted partnership with the client, being the point of contact for both strategic and operational feedback and objective setting. A CSM focuses on understanding their client's unique business challenges and goals, driving towards those targets, and reporting and analyzing metrics like SLAs and SLOs, as well as incidents and requests. The CSM works with the client on account governance, which means conducting operationally focused meetings, reviewing performance and environmental metrics, and presenting strategic business reviews. These checkpoints bolster collaboration and deepen the understanding between client and service teams. Through this process, CSMs provide clients with metrics and analytics, which not only measure KPIs, but also inform recommendations for continuous service improvement. This should ultimately lead to increased stability and more efficient response and resolution times, as some examples. Wister, what are your thoughts on continuous improvement?
Continuous improvement is a huge focus, because you have to base it on something, right? And it's based on metrics and data. So I'd like to get Stefan's viewpoint, like what's key to the relationship with this individual? How have they helped you, maybe see where to go, or what the challenges are, or how things are going?
Sure, Wister. Our CSM is really critical to our overall engagement. Fortunate for us, we've had the same CSM for well over 2 years since our production deployment on our current public cloud provider with Taos' assistance. And really, the CSM is the point person. They're a point person around any new projects or initiatives that we're looking into. They're the point person to wrangle any Taos resources, whether they're resources related to a service issue, whether they're resources related to any of those projects and initiatives that we're looking to do on the professional services side. We have standing weekly reviews, right, with all parties, where we go through open tickets, we go through the metrics, we have a quarterly QBR meeting where we talk about everything top to bottom, right, in terms of how Taos is performing, how Griffin and our systems are performing, and most importantly, how we can make things better in the areas that aren't meeting our expectations. And lastly, the historic knowledge of successes and failures, right, for other clients and how they've implemented and leveraged other technologies, similar technologies, I should say, a similar approach or similar process in terms of what we're looking at. Having that knowledge base and having that arm, if you will, to give you guidance as to, hey, this worked for this customer, this was the application, or this hasn't worked, quite honestly. That's critical to us.
Yeah, that's key items that you mentioned there. I think, when we talk about, or we reference back some of the key challenges from the beginning, right, that we're all trying to, figure out, how do I control costs? How do I minimize my response time? How do I maximize the people and the work that they're doing? Those analytics and so forth, you have to be able to dig into the data, because if you're not digging into the data, then again, I go back to how are you measuring success, from the overall engagement? So this success manager is, it's a partner and it's an advocate, right? They are partnering with the client from the standpoint of, what is it that you need? How do we accomplish what you're doing? Tell me where you're going, right? If you don't have anyone that's driving the hybrid cloud managed services operation to where the client's going, then you're probably not helping the client go somewhere. And so you need that person, as a partner. And from an advocate perspective, right, they're trying to hold the operations center accountable, right? They have SLAs, they have SLOs, they get measured on those numbers. How well are they doing, right? Are we meeting? Are we exceeding? Can we do more? And, as you analyze through that, and automation that's being put in place because of some of the individuals like the SREs or the architects, because we've seen recurrence of situations that have occurred. Can I automate? How much can I automate? And although I automate, was the automation of value? So I have to be able to measure how valuable that automation was. I put work into the automation, right? So the automation can be anything from the standpoint of, let me have a process that fixes the issue, and now let me measure how many times those issues have been fixed by the automation. The automation could be, this scenario happened, let me go and triage and get a lot of the data so the individual doesn't have to go through it individually and try to figure those things out. So those are all of the things that hopefully a customer success manager would bring to the table. And then with that said, as we go on to one of our last slides here, measuring customer success. I think a big thing here is we're really trying to focus on lower the rate of incidents over time through automation, through looking at the analytics, through being proactive as opposed to reactive. And then how do I do quicker response time, right? If an alert from observability, as we said earlier, right, you may have a monitoring system in place, but has it really been configured correctly? And once it's configured correctly, can we automate the process to create tickets where there's substantial information in there, so that now I have a run book that then tells me, okay, here are the things that I need to do. Here's how I have to communicate. Here's how I have to escalate and do those items so that I can close those response time. Through the automation put in place, and we look at the reducing of ticket volumes, we improve processes, which ultimately leads us to fewer escalations. And I think if a managed service provider can bring these services and these attributes to the table, then we improve the client trust, and you become a trusted advisor, a trusted partner with the client. So Stefan, in your experience with all that Taos has done and what you've seen with others, tell us a little bit about how you've measured the customer success that we've had with you.
Yeah, it's been a great partnership. Griffinai is a unique company. Historically, we've done a lot with little, and that's really a testament to our employees, right, and how hard they work and how committed they are to the cause. However, you need to be able to augment those efforts, right, and that's really what we do with Taos through the hybrid cloud managed service. And just looking at things sort of chronologically, from the point we made the decision to go to the public cloud about 3 years ago and started our proof of concept with Taos, it's been a real true partnership, and I don't say that lightly. for the most part, Taos has been an extension of Griffin.ai in our efforts. And I can't say that about our previous managed services provider, in all honesty. So, you guys helped us architect and successfully migrate most of our tech stack in 90 days. That's hundreds of VMs, hundreds of networking connections, from the point that agreements were signed, right? And that also includes setting up, a monitoring and alerting system that had everything we needed to be successful, right? Making sure that we had curl checks, making sure that we had health checks, making sure that we had service checks, and so forth. Post the migration, you guys helped us tune everything. You helped us optimize the public cloud, right? And all it had to offer from a security perspective, from an automation perspective, from a scalability perspective, which has been critical. As we've matured and as we've become more familiar with the environment that we're in, you guys have also helped us migrate our telephony stacks, put custom monitoring and alerting around that, which is, it's a different animal than what we did previous. And helped us look at other technologies like Kubernetes and other technologies through the cloud providers marketplace, of which we've implemented successfully and used today and have expanded on. So overall, Taos has really been mission critical to our our deployment and our continual successes in the cloud, through hybrid cloud managed services.
Thanks for that, Steph. I really appreciate your commentary on the success that we've had. It's critical for everyone to really understand all of the key factors that they need to take in consideration when looking at a hybrid cloud managed service provider, and the things that you really need, and what value that managed service provider is going to bring to you. So, with that said, I hope that everyone found this session to be informative and relevant to hybrid cloud managed services for them. If you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to us either through phone. You can contact us on our website. And for all of those individuals that also joined today, we'll be sending out a HCMS ebook to all these attendees shortly next week. I kind of want to open the floor for any Q&A for anyone.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get them answered. To get started, one question is how to reduce the frequency and severity of unplanned outages. How can people reduce the frequency of SEV1 and SEV2 incidents?
Sure, I can take a bit of that, and I'll let Justin add to that. I think we talked a little bit about the observability portion, right? Being able to have the correct monitoring actions in place to identify issues that come through. That's kind of like the first step. I think to add to that, minimizing the amount of time it takes to evaluate and triage, goes around defining the processes up front. So that you have a runbook SOP that can kind of bring the team through. Here's exactly everything you have to check. There's no guessing to the game. If something comes up that's alerted, that's kind of out of the norm, it's a special case, and hopefully you don't have many of those. But those are the types of things that also get identified from an SRE perspective later on to say, hey, this situation occurred. We need to produce a process in place so that if it happens again, we know what to do. Justin, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, I would throw in the fact that, inbound, when we're transitioning into a net new client, we'd like to look at, where do you have HA deployed, right? Where do you have the ability to fall over to a secondary path, for instance, so that you are not having so many incidents. When something fires off, if it's business critical, then you definitely should have HA involved, right? You should have your load balancers. How much do you have built in behind them? Things of that nature. You need to look at this in a holistic approach from an architectural viewpoint to say that, where can we make improvements in the environment itself so that we never actually have to experience a P1 in the business critical environment? That helps too.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Do we have another question?
How do I increase the availability and reliability of services and applications?
I think this adds to the last question that was made around, monitoring, looking at the analytics of the data to understand when things are happening, right? So take, for instance, we see repetitive alerting that happens in a particular week of the month in a particular hour of the day, right? So it's part of the analytics. We've identified that. Now let's go look at, why is that happening? Especially if there's a repetitive process and or pattern, or there's a repetitive process or pattern that actually is affected by something else that's happening, right? There's always a reason why something happens. So to be able to look at the analytics of that data can then put you probably in a place to say, hey, I can be proactive. I know that at any given time, right now, historically, because we're doing the analytics, we see this common scenario happen. How can I prescribe an automation to be put in place? Maybe there's an adjustment to a monitoring that has to happen. Maybe there's just a slight configuration change, right? But so you have to look at everything. And whether it's our tools that are brought to the table, or it's the client's tools because it's their own tools that they want us to use, you have to be able to look at it from an analytic perspective. It doesn't matter whose tools those are. Justin, I don't know if you had something else that you might want to add to that.
Yeah, I'd like to jump back into the front end of this one too, where you were talking about the monitoring and observability. That is absolutely critical. And then another piece is the incident management piece, right? If you got a quality incident management tool in front of this, where you're pumping your alerting into it, it's doing event correlation, right? It's recognizing and telling your team, if it's tuned properly, when it's truly an outage, when something is actually firing off, right? And then along with that, I'll go back to the HA and assuring that you have your critical environments set up to fail over to secondary environments.
Absolutely. Good response. Okay. Jenna, do we have at least one more?
Yep. How do we minimize triage time and escalation process?
Yeah, I think we touched a little bit on this before. It's interesting, the questions coming around. They're all be really affected from the standpoint of an alerting side, right? And we look at, from a triage, how do I minimize that mean time to respond? So again, well-defined alerts that come in, and kind of touch point on something I probably mentioned a little bit is, how do we get those to inject tickets automatically, right? As opposed to someone paying attention to an alerting system and looking at the dashboard there to say, oh, there's an alert, I need to create a ticket. No, why not get that alert to come in to the ticketing system? So you have an ITSM that's integrated fully. It's alerted. It could get alerted in response to creating the ticket as well as to close the ticket, maybe as it gets resolved. But so that's one factor to minimize some of that triage time, as far as from the time that it happens, the point where it's going to get resolved. The other is that well-defined process and being able to have within the ITSM a link to the run book, the SOP, in regards to, here are the exact steps that I need to take, right? This is step 1, step 2, step 3, and if my my outcome isn't what I define, who do I escalate it to? That escalation process goes to another team. That particular other team now goes through their process, which may also be defined. Maybe it's an access item. But note, the SOP doesn't just doesn't show up, right? You have to go through the exercise of identifying the access criteria. What knowledge does the managed services bring to the table to say, hey, if you have this situation happen, here are the things that you have to check. This is the benchmark of the items, right? Best practices, in many times of how and what needs to be done, so that you can, close that triage time, close that mean time to respond or acknowledge, so that then you have a smaller window from a resolution perspective. And Justin, I don't know if there's anything else you can add to that.
Yeah, I'd just like to throw in the fact that empowering your people, right? Because you have all the tool sets here, and if you get all the tool sets in place, it's empowering your people to make these changes as well. The L2 team, that first responder team, they are very good at recognizing when a standard operating procedure doesn't work well, right? They need to be empowered to be able to update that knowledge base, produce that information to the next level so that they can review it, sign off on it, get the updated documentation brought in, and therefore we are that much quicker in responding and restoring service on the next go around when this happens.
Excellent, thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more, Jenna.
Sure. If the client chooses the container-based hybrid cloud case using OpenShift in the future, do we actually integrate and be easier, I guess, have easier operations among on-prem and public?
Well, interesting question. I think that may require a little bit more in depth to understand what's being implemented, how is it being implemented, but definitely I think there's some options around that. We could probably take that one, reach out to whoever asked that question and get a little bit more detail around their environment, so I kind of can answer that a little bit more appropriately, unless, Justin, you have a different viewpoint.
I definitely think a little more information would help. I would say that there's some synergies. We have a few clients out there that are working both on-prem and in the public cloud with OpenShift. So we have some real-time scenarios that we could apply to this and discuss further.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, lays back to what we said previous, right? Do you have the right expertise? What expertise do you have in-house for the different clients and so forth, and the asks that they have, right? Do you have Red Hat OpenShift, right? Are you using Azure, are you using AWS, using GCP, any of these types of clouds, any of these types of, technologies and so forth. And so being able to have the different expertise in-house will always help you to, one, stay in front of the curve, basically, and then making sure that you can progress with any new technology that's coming forward. So thank you very much. All right, Jenna, I think we're done there, unless you have some closing comments.
Nope.
Okay. Well, as always, I've kind of left a slide up here. Any questions, you can definitely reach out to us via phone. You have our contact URLs that are here. And for those attendees that were here today, we'll be sending out an ACMS ebook to attendees. So thank you very much for your time. I greatly appreciate everyone taking time out of their calendar. Have a great day.